And we are live. G'day everyone, Mike Jeffrey here, and you are listening to My Creative Journey, episode number 42. To all your listeners out there, hello, and thank you so much for taking the time to stop by here today. As I said, my name is Mike, and I'm a photographer, podcaster, and small business owner based here in Sydney, Australia. Each week on the show, I bring you guys along on the highs and lows of my own creative journey and share all the knowledge that I've gained along the road to building my own freelance business. This week's episode is going to be a little bit different to my normal episodes. I'm going to try and keep this one a little bit shorter. As you may have realized, there isn't anything going on behind me here, and that is because I'm actually moving tomorrow. So as I'm recording this podcast, I'm moving tomorrow, but I really wanted to get this podcast episode out. I'm getting the office all ready to go, already packed up. If you haven't heard already, I'm actually moving to Port Macquarie in New South Wales. So that is happening tomorrow, and we're in the stages of moving over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to try and keep this episode a little bit short because I don't have a lot of time at the moment, but I wanted to be able to get the podcast out, and that has been something that you guys have been really enjoying, and I'm enjoying producing these podcasts, and you guys are really enjoying listening to them, and I'm really thankful for all the listeners of this podcast and anyone who has taken the time to reach out to me and really express how much this podcast means to them. So I'm always about really making sure that I do really turn up for you guys and make sure that I'm always here and recording episodes as often as I can, even if that means that they do have to be a bit shorter like today's one. I really want to touch on, first off, before we jump into today's episode and all the things surrounding that, I want to really touch on something I spoke about last week, which was that I'm actually doing Movember this year. Now, if you don't know what Movember is, it's why I have this ugly moustache on my top lip here. I'm not really growing a very great moustache, but that is what I have been growing it for all through the lockdown here in Sydney this year. I've been growing this moustache, and I thought that I would try to do Movember this year. I tried to do it last year, but it was unsuccessful to actually grow a moustache in a whole month. So I have started a lot earlier this year, back in August. And as this podcast goes out, it'll be the 1st of November. So Movember runs for the whole month of November, and I'm actually trying to raise money for your mental health and men's physical health as well. So I do have a little bit of a fundraising page. My goal is to raise $200. I don't know how we'll go getting there, but I just want to really put that out there and really put that out there at the start of this episode. That's going to be something I'm going to be doing for the rest of the month. So you guys will probably hear a little bit more about it, and hopefully I can speak more on it towards the back end of the month. But if you would like to donate, I will leave the link to the donation page in the description of this podcast, and it'll also be on Instagram if you guys are over there as well. I'm sure I will speak about it there. But really what I want to talk about today is my whole experience and what's actually happening at the moment. So if you guys aren't aware, I'm actually moving to Port Macquarie. So moving next week, which is a little bit scary for me and my own business, but I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be the change that I've really been after, the change that I think I've needed after this past couple of years being in Sydney through the pandemic and through the lockdowns and things like that. It just hasn't really felt like home, and hasn't felt like a space conducive for me and my own creativity, and a place that I was starting to feel a bit drained with, to be honest with you guys. So I'm really excited about moving, and excited about moving my own business and moving everything to a new space. That's going to be really nice, but also moving to a new area, moving into a new community, and moving in with new people and surrounding myself with different types of people. So that is what we're going to be speaking on in this podcast today, specifically about how we can sort of shape our environment to be conducive to creativity, conducive to the type of mindset that we are after. And this is something that I've experienced a lot, and I've spoken about it before on the podcast, but I really wanted to touch on it today because I think it is relevant to the thing that I'm going through at the moment, and trying to understand a little bit about how that process is unfolding for me over the past few weeks, and how I've been sort of thinking about the move, and how I'm thinking about what things I need to do in order to get ready for that move. So having a bit of issues with my chair there. So I really want to talk about that today, and talk about from my personal experience of when I moved last time. So I really want to go back and sort of dive into some of the things that really helped me when I moved before, when I actually moved to Sydney probably 5.5 years ago now, which is crazy to even think about, and talk about the experiences I had then and how I'm trying to use the things that I had then to really move me and really have me in a better position for what I'm going to go through this time. And hopefully you guys may take something away from this if you're feeling like you're stuck, if you're feeling like you're in a position where it's not conducive. There's nothing happening in your environment. There's no people around you that are really inspiring you, and hopefully this can sort of prompt you to really take those next steps and move out and move to a new space, move into a new environment, move to a new friend group, move around the right types of people to get action actually happening. So that is what I want this episode to be all about. Now, if you guys aren't aware of my story, I'm going to go back a little bit on the story of my life and the story of how I started my business, how I started a little bit about my photography business as well. And this really, I'm really going to really span back here because I moved out of home at the end of high school. So I moved away for university at the end of high school. And I moved out specifically to come to Sydney, specifically to go to university. And at the time, I didn't see it as super important, being able to move to Sydney. I didn't see that as the big part. I saw the big part as actually going to uni. But now, as I look back on that, I don't think university was all the experience that it was all wrapped up to be. And I didn't really gain a lot from university and the actual education around that, as I'm not really using the degree that I have at the moment. So the education around that wasn't really something that I've taken a lot away from and really used a lot over the past few years, obviously in my own business and things like that. But the main takeaway for me was moving away from home and moving into a new environment, moving with and surrounding myself with different types of people. And I think those experiences are often more beneficial to you, and those sort of your networking environments and having conversation with other people can really open up your worldview. And I think that's really what it did for me when I moved to Sydney probably 5.5 years ago now. When I moved here, the types of people that I was exposed to were unlike anything else I had ever come across. As I said, and I think I've spoken about this on a podcast episode before, about not understanding what careers are out there, and you don't really know, and you're not exposed to that when you're in high school. As I said, I grew up in a smaller town, and most of the people sort of revolve in the same careers, and they mostly do what their parents did. They mostly do what is required in the town. So a lot of people are going to work in industries that are required in that sort of town. And this is obviously going to be the case in all different areas, but those careers and those industries are going to vary depending on where you live. So it's not too uncommon for people to fall into those sort of careers of where they actually are. So for me, moving away, it was an eye-opening experience because it opened me up to other things that I'd never heard of. Obviously, when I was in high school, for me, the only path that I had open to me after high school, in my opinion, was to be able to go to university. For me, it was either you go to university or you could go sort of practice a trade in some sort of profession like that, in an industry like that, or you walk into a job and you end up in that job just in the town. So for me, university was the path I really wanted to take because education was something that I was interested in. And if you were interested in education, you just went through to university, and that was the only path that I really saw because it was the only one that was really presented to me, and no other paths were really shown to me that they were actually viable. Because I think a lot of people look down on creative careers, and we've spoken about this on the podcast before, that creative careers are often frowned upon, but only because people don't realize that they can be successful in a creative career. If you don't have a role model in a set creative career, then it's very hard to know if that is a career that you want to go down because you haven't seen that role model for you. You haven't seen if it's going to be successful. A lot of people don't like the uncertainty of creative careers, and they think that that comes about because they haven't seen a lot of people in that career before. If you see a lot of people in a career, you know that it's probably a pretty stable career. Otherwise, so many people wouldn't walk down that path. Isn't always the case, but I think as a majority, as a sort of rule, if you can see a lot of people in one certain career, you can think that that's a generally pretty stable career, and there's a lot of interest and a lot of demand in that. So for me, I never was really exposed to that when I was sort of growing up in high school and things like that. So moving away for uni, it wasn't so much for me the education that I got in the career and the degree that I was in, because while in education I wouldn't have been able to get at home, that wasn't the main thing that really stuck out to me. It was the interactions with other people that I wouldn't have actually met in my hometown. The different types of people that had gone to completely different high schools, that had been from families that had those experiences, had those types of role models in their family in completely different industries, and speaking to people and hearing what they were trying to strive to do really put me back, because I thought that why would you want to go do something that is not going to give you a career afterwards? Why would you want to go do something that's so uncertain? Why would you want to go into any type of career that there isn't a clear set path for? But for these people, there was a clear set path because they'd heard about it before. They'd had other family members, other friends, other people in their circle that had done that before. So that wasn't an uncommon thing to do. And I think this is really important if you're going to pursue something, you definitely need to be able to surround yourself with people who have tried to do it before and people who are moving on the same sort of wavelength as you. And people not necessarily who are interested in the same career as you, the exact same career, but people who are happy to take that leap, people who are happy to put themselves out there, people who are inspired, people who are driven. If you want to try and drive yourself along, you need to be surrounded by that group. And I've spoken about you just being the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I think that's really true. I think the more you hang around those types of people, the more the energy sort of rubs off on you. And if you hang around people who are inspired and are always up, actively trying to go and do things and trying to expand careers and look into new areas, then you're going to be inspired by them as well. And I think that whole environment thing was a real eye-opener for me because it was outside of something that I had seen as being okay. I'd only seen people who were just walking down a career path that they knew was quote unquote safe because they'd seen so many people in that before. They'd been told at school that was okay. They'd been told that if all of you guys go down that, then that is a pretty safe path. So there was no one sort of veering off to the left or right there because they'd been all sort of ushered in one direction. And for no one to ever have come along and said, I'm in this career, I try to do this, I want to do this, that, and the other, it's very hard for anyone else to sort of make their own way in that, especially when you don't have anyone to speak to about it, when you don't have people to talk to, when you've never heard from those types of people before. So as I said, that was one of the biggest experiences for me moving out of home. And that was one of the main reasons why I sort of fell out of love with what I was trying to do at university, because I'd now been exposed to other things that I probably enjoyed more. And if I look back, I probably enjoyed photography more earlier on, but I just never saw that as a career. I was also, as I said to you guys before, I think I've spoken about, I sort of dabbled in music as well. And that was something that I was always interested in at high school, but I never saw that as a career path that I could go down. I eventually didn't enjoy that as much, but it was never something that I pursued at school. I never sort of opened myself up to try it. And I think that is the main point. I think it's okay if you don't enjoy it as much. It's okay if you try something and then you work out that it's not for you, but at least just have a go at it. And I think for me, I never actually tried anything because I never saw that there was any career progression. And for me, I've always been someone that there's no point sort of wasting your time trying something if you don't think there's an end path there, if you don't think that it's actually going to be something worth your while. There's no point trying it out because you could be spending time working on something else that you could actually see progression in, and you've just spent all that time on something that there is no progression in. So for me, I wasn't going to go work on music or try to be a musician if I never saw a career path in that, because there's no point wasting years working on something that I never saw a career path in. But obviously there is a career path in music. I just didn't know the people who were sort of taking that path. And so when I moved away, when I met people who were in the industry, when I met people who were sort of successful in their own right, as I said, you don't need to be an A-class celebrity to be successful in that industry. And we've spoken about this, that in most creative fields, people tend to think that it's either all or nothing. If you're not at the top, then you aren't anything. And there is that sort of a middle ground. And if you're not speaking to people, if you're not learning how they are surviving, if you're not learning how they're actually making money in the field, then very hard for you to know if there's a career in it. So speaking to these types of people and learning how they were able to make money, learning how they were able to survive and actually make an income from it, opened me up to different things, because these were never things that I heard about at school. I always heard about that you had to go get a job, had to go your work a 9 to 5, because that was the easiest way to earn money, the easiest way to survive in life. As I said, if I look back on it, it was probably something that I was really interested in before, and these are not things that I was uninterested in, that I was brand new exposed to. These were things that I enjoyed before, and I enjoyed photography, and I always have probably enjoyed photography and sort of leaned into that as a creative field, because it's something that I've always seen really resonates with my style. Being able to work by myself has always been something that I've really enjoyed. Being able to be here, have a conversation by myself without other people around, be able to do what I want to do has always been something that I really wanted to do, but I never saw a career for that. So I saw that I had to go and do something that, I enjoyed, but I couldn't really see myself enjoying it for long term. And so, opening myself up and being around other different types of people. And it's the same, I think, for me as we move through that. And as I started my business and as I moved into that, trying to surround myself with people who are also in the industry. I think this is super important for anyone who is starting a business, anyone who's starting an independent business, especially if you're trying to start a business like myself as a photographer on your own. If you're not working with clients, if you're not actually working with staff, if you don't hire staff, if you don't have other people you work with on a regular basis, apart from your own clients, which there can be a high sort of turnover on that. If you're not working with other staff members and other people in the industry, I think it's important to go out and try to find other people in that industry. And that's something that I've definitely struggled with over the past couple of years. Definitely being in lockdown hasn't helped in being able to find other people and find those people in that type of circle. I really get stuck on the idea of really working from home, because to me it feels like it's really enjoyable, and I love working from home and I love the freedom that it provides, but also I'm not going to be able to make connections at home. I'm not going to meet anyone in my lounge room. I'm not going to be able to have conversations with people in any type of industry in my lounge room. This is why I enjoy being able to get out there and get out and speak to people in my everyday life and talk to my other friends and family and talk to people who have different experiences to mine, because as much as I can feel myself improving, I'm not really when I'm in an isolated community here at home in my office. I can't be improving as much as I think I am. So it's important to go and speak to other people. And these don't need to be people specifically in your industry. They don't need to be, if I'm a photographer, they don't need to be other photographers, but people in a creative career, other people who are starting their own businesses, other people who are trying to do things similar to what you're doing, and people with the same sort of drive and ambition as you. And I've always found that important, and surrounding myself with those types of people. So that is something that I have been really missing out on in the last couple of years, in not being able to surround myself with those types of people, because I find that often benefits me and sort of gives me that motivation, because if I can see someone else trying to do something, I'm more motivated to continue at it, and it sort of gives that bit of friendly competition as well, and you can think that you can sort of bounce off one another. But also then, if you have questions, if you have things go wrong, you can also talk to someone else. You can ask questions, you can learn things from other people that you may not even been exposed to before. And I think this is one of the things that we can do, especially on social media a little bit. We can talk to other business owners, other creatives out there, other people who are in our industry, but in other industries as well, and see what they're doing, see what the sort of trends are, see what people are turning away from, see what's working for some people, what's working for other people, and using those things and asking questions of people. If I see something on social media, I'll often just ask them a question, just message them and ask a question about how they did X, how they did Y, how they're able to do this, how they're able to work with this person, how they were able to do this, that, and the other. You know, it's okay to ask a question, and I get a lot of questions. I get a question through the week about a small thing I was trying to do in my business, and I had it on my story on Instagram, and I had a person respond to me asking me how I was able to do that. And I went into a whole load of detail about how I was able to do that, because I'm really open with how I'm able to do things, and I like to be able to share with people, and I'm okay with people asking me questions, because I don't think that it's not holding me back. So I'm happy to bring other people up, and I don't think that is any hindrance. And so surrounding myself with those types of people who are happy to help you on your way up, I think is super important. And so really getting to the final point of what I want to speak on here today is me moving away and me restarting a business in a new area. Now that is always really scary, and that is something that I'm going to have to come to terms with. Obviously, I do have a lot of work already booked up here in Sydney, and I'm still going to do that work. It's not that far away. It's probably like a 4.5 hour drive to come back to Sydney, and I'll probably be back quite a few weekends for the rest of this year. But moving my whole business and my whole sort of scheme around how I was trying to book clients in to a new area is going to be scary. But I'm excited for the community. I'm excited that it's more targeted. Maybe it's not as the market may not be as oversaturated as well, to have some sort of more community. I think important when moving to a small community is to be able to get to know other people in the community. And I'm excited for that, excited to be able to speak with other people who have actually worked there before, and speak with other people who are in my industry, but other people who are in other industries as well. I think small business in all areas is really exploding, and a lot of people are starting to work for themselves. And I think a lot of people have great ideas, and a lot of people are expanding in different areas that you may not have seen only a few years ago. And so using that, I really want to be able to surround myself with those types of people and try to create that community that I haven't been able to have over the last couple of years being in lockdown, haven't been able to speak with a lot of people in person, haven't been able to work with a lot of people in person. So trying to start that off afresh and trying to be able to introduce myself to new people and create those new environments to really help myself up. How I really go about this, I'm not sure. How I sort of reach out to people, I've mostly gone about it reaching out to people on social media, and I really find that most of the time it's a very open space. Most people are happy to answer questions. Most people are happy to are really happy to have a chat. If you want to meet up in person, most people are really happy for that. And so using that and trying to create some sort of space around that where I can feel comfortable to open up about my own work and sort of talk about that and sort of expand and be able to help each other. I think that is the most important way when creating that some sort of community, and how community can really help you in being able to grow your own business. It is certainly going to be a scary process moving the business, but I think as a whole, I think I'm in a very fortunate position that I'm very early stages of my business. As you guys know, I only started in wedding photography earlier this year, so I'm not too far into it that I've already booked out for the whole next year, and I'm already here in Sydney every single weekend next year. So I've still got some sort of leeway, and especially after the end of lockdown opening back up again, I think a lot of people are moving stuff to next year, moving things that they had planned this year to next year. So there is opportunity there, and I'm very excited to be able to move to a smaller community that is a bit more targeted and can have a bit more of an understanding of who these people are. And I think in markets like in big areas like in Sydney and that, it can be very hard to stand out because the market can feel oversaturated, but the market can also feel like there's no genuine connection with any of these photographers. It's hard to reach someone, hard to really work on building up a client base that is sort of word of mouth when the community is so large. If you're not getting to know other people, if you're not getting to know other photographers, if other photographers are working here, there, and the other, all over the place, it's very hard to build community in that type of area. So I'm very much looking forward to moving to a community that's going to be more sort of confined and more easier to find myself as a part of. And this is something that I've been looking for over the past couple of years, and being able to find myself in a community, being able to be the business that I want, being able to expand the business a little bit, because I think over the course of this year, I've really used the year to know what it is I enjoy, know the styles of things that I do, and really understand the areas that I'm happy to work in. For me, there's not going to be as much stress to have to work in one particular area. There's not going to be as much stress to have to experiment in all different areas, because I've tried a lot now. I've tried so many different things that I feel very confident that when I walk in, I can sort of be able to set myself up in a way that I'm very clear on what it is I do, and I'm very clear on the things that I enjoy. And so I think that is the one key to success, is really understanding what you do best and understanding what you enjoy, and really marketing yourself around that and trying to create that sort of brand around the things that is you enjoy. And if you can find a community that's going to help you in that, then that's really great as well. And trying to find other people who are also trying to do the same types of things. And I think a lot of small businesses thrive through that, being able to stick to what that is they do best and stick to the things that they really enjoy. And hopefully I can find a little bit of a community around that. And I'm very much excited for the things that are to come. And so that's probably where I'm going to leave today's episode, guys. I hope you gained a little bit of insight from this. I hope you gained something from it, being able to build a community. I think that's been so important for me, so important on Instagram, in real life as well, for my own business. Being able to speak to other people, speak to people with different experiences and understanding a little bit about them, but also understanding about what it is they do, because you can't know if something is able to be done if you've never heard it being done before. So for me, that really helped, and I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to continue to sort of learn off new people as I move to a new community, learn what it is that the people in the community like, learn what it is I'm able to do, learn what it is that I probably shouldn't do there that I was able to do here, and learning a lot of different things and keeping my eyes open and keeping my mind open as well to things that I'm able to do. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. I'm going to be speaking a little bit more in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully the episodes will continue to come. As I said, I'm moving tomorrow, but also moving through next week, and hopefully we'll be able to keep the episodes coming out, and you guys have been really supporting the episodes. And just lastly, before I do go, remember that my fundraising page for November is open. I'll leave a link to that in the description below, guys. But I really hope you did enjoy this quite shorter episode, but I really wanted to just really able to get my ideas out there. As I said, this podcast for me has been something from my own journey and something for me to look back on, and I hope that it's able to help you guys as well. And I think I'll remember this time in moving spaces, moving out of Sydney as well. That's going to be very scary, but also wanted to get some of my thoughts down. And I've been thinking a lot about the community aspect, and that's been something that I'm looking forward to, because it really helped me when I did move to Sydney, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it's going to go moving out of a big city and moving into a smaller community, and hopefully something that I can find myself as being a part of. But if you did enjoy this episode, guys, I would really love to hear from you. I've been hearing I've been hearing from a lot of different people over the past week, and I've really appreciated that, actually. I really sit here and record these episodes. I don't know who's listening to them, so it's really nice when anyone reaches out and says that they've been enjoying episodes of the podcast, because it helps me to know what I can make future episodes on. As I said, I'm trying to make these episodes more targeted to people in the creative industry, so hopefully that is you and that applies, and you are really enjoying these episodes as well. So if you would like anything, and if you have been enjoying any episodes, I would love to hear from you guys. But until next week, I hope you have a great week, and I will speak to you all again next Monday.